Okay, grade 11, so I'm going to take up your plants homework now. I'll do this as quickly as possible. So it says list the features shared by plants and caryophytes that are not shared with most other eukaryotes. So what you want to know there is that we believe that plants came from algae based on a lot of their DNA, but also based on other features that no other organism shares. So caryophytes are their phylum in the kingdom Protista. So they're an algae, and that's a certain phylum of the algae. So what do they share in common with plants? Plants and green algae both contain chlorophyll A and B. Okay, they both store their excess carbohydrates as starch. So you can't say that about anything in bacteria, archaea, animalia, and fungi. Nothing else has that capability. And they both have cell walls made of cellulose. And when these organisms are undergoing mitosis, they both make a cell plate, okay? So between the two new daughter cells, they're making a cell plate. And again, you don't see that with bacteria, you don't see that with archaea, you don't see that with a fungus. So based on DNA evidence and based on those different features, we believe that plants came from green algae. Based on your understanding of endosymbiosis and the evolution of eukaryotes, would you expect any photosynthetic bacteria to share the same pigments as caryophytes and plants? Absolutely, because we believe that all life started from archaea, and archaea are closely related to bacteria. These are the ancestors to all life on Earth. So 100% we would expect bacteria to share some similar pigments, which would be your chlorophyll A and your chlorophyll B. Explain how each of the following adaptations dramatically enhance the success of land plants. So quickly, you're going to have more detail here that I'm going to go through with you, but vascular tissue allows land plants to get tall. All right, so if you've got xylem and phloem, you can take water up to leaves that don't have to stay low-lying anymore, like in a moss. The phone. Animal pollination allows for reproduction. Okay, so it's that simple. If you can get your seed to stick to an animal or your pollen to stick to an animal, it's going to get dispersed. Pollen grains are extremely light, okay? So very light, and again, that just allows for the plant to reproduce and get stuck to animals or wind, whatever it might be. Seeds are a really good adaptive mechanism because they allow your offspring to stay dormant until the proper conditions arise and that seed can start to come to life. Okay, I'm saying come to life like it's not alive, but it does stay dormant. Fruit, excellent adaptation because you're going to enclose your seed in something that animals would love to eat. So the animal, let's say the rabbit eats the apple, it ends up consuming some of the seeds and it hops away and poops those seeds out somewhere else. And what it's really doing is planting the seeds for the tree. Okay, why doesn't the tree want the seeds to grow right underneath it? Because then its offspring would be in competition for sunlight. So, plants need sunlight. So if the offspring is competing, then the plant the genes will not be successful, okay? They've got to have those seeds away from the parent plant so they can grow properly. Mycorrhizal relationships, what's the benefit there? They're sharing water with a fungus and exchanging nutrients. So it's a symbiotic relationship. All right, make a table with check marks to indicate which of the adaptations in question 2 occur in the groups of plants. So I'm going to give you some hints here with these relationships. So when we look at question 3, do mosses have vascular tissue? Absolutely not. They're low-lying. Okay, so these guys are very, very short. Can mosses have animal pollination? Well, anything can happen if an animal's walking over the moss or if it's eating the moss. But these guys are the ones with those swimming gametes. So they have to have some kind of moisture. So typically the gametes aren't going too far. It's a possibility. And so you might get frustrated with my answers because I'm going to say most of these guys are a possibility. Do mosses have pollen grains? No. Do they have seeds? No. Do they have fruit? No. Do they have mycorrhizal relationships? No. Okay, ferns. Do ferns have vascular tissue? Absolutely. Can their spores be transmitted through animal pollination? Well, pollination implies that we're grabbing pollen and putting it on the animal. So if we're looking at spores, the spores have already been formed. So I'm going to have to go with a no on that one. But can the spores grab a hold of an animal? Absolutely, they can. But again, pollination implies that the gametes haven't met yet, because the pollen is the male gamete and then the ovule is the female gamete. All right. So in terms of ferns, we're going to go with a no on that one. Pollen grains, they don't produce pollen. They're going to have spores. Seeds, no. Fruit, ferns don't produce fruit, and they don't have these relationships. Conifers, okay, your evergreens. Do they have vascular tissue? Absolutely. Can they go through animal pollination? Well, they can, okay, because they have male and female gametes in their cones. So I know it's not called pollen, but if we think about it just as reproduction, yes. Pollen grains, no, because they don't produce pollens, and so we're not going to use the word pollen there. Seeds, yes, the seeds can certainly be transported. Fruit, they don't produce fruit. Evergreens don't produce fruit. Do they have these relationships? Absolutely. Okay. And lastly, flowering plants, do they have vascular tissue? Yes. Animal pollination, this is where it's really going to come into play, because flowering plants produce pollen. Do they have pollen grains? Are they going to benefit from the pollen grains? Yes. They produce pollen, absolutely, on those anthers. Do they produce seeds? Yes. So they have that. Fruit, many flowering plants produce fruit, because your trees, you might not realize this, but any tree that produces fruit has gone through sexual reproduction. So absolutely for that. And then do they have these relationships? Not normally. Not to say they can't, but it's not something that typically happens. Why are seeds a particularly valuable source of food for humans and other animals? Because they have that encased nutritive source. So in other words, there's nutrition in the seed, okay, and there's protein in the seed to get the plant to grow. So why are they a valuable source of food? Because they have the stored food resource for the developing plant. And so the parent plant gives that little seed as much of a go in life, an advantage in life as it possibly can get. So when you eat seeds, you get the protein that the plant was supposed to get.